So we're so happy to have each one of these candidates with us tonight, all four of them, running for one position. And I am grateful to the Lord to have a young lady who has been a bright spot for the First Baptist Church and been here many times and shared in many different ways. And that's none other than Channel 7's own Roger Maples. So we're going to turn it over to her, and she will be our moderator for tonight. Let's give God praise and encourage her as she comes.
Thank you so much, Pastor Jones. It's a privilege and an honor to be here in your presence and all of your presence. First of all, I would like to congratulate each of you for stepping up to the plate. As everybody knows, this is a very difficult job, rather, and thank you for stepping up to a very difficult task. So my hat's off to you. The format of this debate is going to be, I will ask a question. You will each have 3 minutes to answer the exact same question. And we will start with Mike Trope. And the second question, we will start with Paul Hattermeal and on down. Then after I ask about 7 questions or so, we will take answers and questions from the audience, and we'll go from there. So does that everybody understand okay? All right, let's get started. So first of all, let's talk about the fact that there has been a lot of discussion about the future of Quincy's economy and businesses. Small businesses, large businesses, larger businesses taking over smaller businesses. What's needed to help all of the above?
Thank you, Raja. I appreciate that question. The businesses this last year have been hit very hard with COVID. And as they were shut down and were not able to operate and function, we have some businesses that have closed and will not reopen. On the other side, we've got some of our larger, more successful businesses that cannot fill all their job openings. So I think what's critical as I'm looking at being the next mayor is to look at ways to help the businesses attract the skilled workers that are needed. We've got hundreds of skilled jobs, not just in industrial jobs, but also in our healthcare industry, which is a significant part of Quincy at this stage. At the same time, we have to also look at what can we do to help grow our small businesses. And not only to reopen the ones that were there, the city started a loan program with some of the money that they got through the government program. I think that's a great start. I'd like to attract more businesses throughout Quincy, not just the downtown area, because we know that in communities that the small businesses are successful, you typically will see a thriving community. And that's what we want to get back. I'm trying to focus, what are we going to do to get through the recovery of COVID in 2021, and what can we do to get the jobs back, the industry, the economy humming like it was pre-COVID. And I think we can get that done.
Thank you. As we talk about business recovery and economic recovery, I think obviously small business is the backbone of any community and any entity. The Small Business Emergency Grant Program that the city has used some CARES money to go into is at $500,000, I believe, amount. And to date, they've helped about 107 businesses. So I think we need to keep working about helping small business access those grants, access things that can help them recover. I think we need to keep our city attractive as infrastructure, cleanliness, just everything that's involved with keeping the city attractive in order to make it that part of a recruiting tool for our larger employers as well. So I think if we start with some of the basic things, will help us get to the larger things that we want to do. It can be a component of that recruiting effort that will help our large employers recruit the people that they need. I think really the government role in any economic recovery or economic conversation is really just to create an environment that all of our businesses we make our permitting processes as easy as we can while still protecting, the citizens. We make city government customer service oriented, to where we are welcoming to anybody that comes in that needs city services. We do a pretty good job of that now, and we always have, but I think we can do better. And I would like to make sure that in my administration that's a core belief and a core mantra that we repeat, is that we will be customer friendly. And by customer friendly, anybody, including businesses that need help, either recovering, growing, expanding, we can do all of that. And my administration will be that type.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? All right. So I have a feeling that every answer to almost every question is going to be interconnected, because when we're talking about small business and large business and attracting, we're talking about economic development, and we're talking about things like the 45 by 30 plan, which I support, and working together with Great River Economic Development Foundation and bringing new industry, new jobs, new small businesses to Quincy. We've been talking about that for a long time, though. Obviously, the pandemic is going to flavor everything that we talk about for a while. So I think it's imperative that we have a great marketing program to tell people what we've got here. I had an opportunity to talk with a group of small business owners who have suffered, but they also are questioning why, when they are open now, people are not coming in. So we've got to get to a point where we can talk about what's going on in a very truthful and purposeful way, and we can assure people that, hey, it's okay to come in, there's distancing, there's masking, what are the elements that these small businesses need? And the first thing they need from us right now is reassurance that it's safe to go back in and to go out to dinner and to do all of those things that we want to do. So I think we've got some things in the works. I was really pleased that the City Council recently upheld the 1% sales tax, so that we can fund a program to say, we're open, we're safe, we're here, come visit us, we'd love to see you. And again, it's all interconnected. And I think that the major works projects, I'm probably sure you have a question about this, but when we get to talking about riverfront development and those things, everything has a ripple effect. So the more we can do to grow and market and talk about Quincy, the better off we'll be.
Hi, I just want to thank everybody first of all for coming tonight, or if you're watching at home, thank you for watching. I agree with pretty much everything that's been said. I think what's key is attraction to our city. That will help our small businesses, that will help our large businesses, and everybody in between. So something really important, I think, is people being attracted to the city. So we need to focus on infrastructure, making our city beautiful and people wanting to come into the city. Additionally, those grants are great, and they were a great start, but we need to continue with those grants to help our small businesses. I know personally people who have had to close their doors to their businesses. I know my mom, she owns a small business, and she's not doing the best with the small business. We need to help small businesses. To get more people into those skilled jobs and to larger businesses, something I think is really important is to stop talking about affordable housing, because that's been talked about for forever, and we have affordable housing, but what we do not have is socially equitable housing. This needs to be talked about, and it's not being talked about. So, thank you guys.
When it comes to how the city has handled the COVID-19 pandemic for the past year, what have you liked, what have you not liked, and what would you do differently?
Handling COVID at the city level or the county level or the health department level has got to be one of the most challenging issues that's ever come up for these elected officials or these government or the staff. On a whole, I think I would applaud how all of those entities, our emergency management folks, and everybody's handled it extremely well. I know the testing facility was incredibly efficient, and the vaccination, from what I'm hearing, facility is very efficient. I think probably one of the things that I think early on that might have been a bit confusing for folks was when we had government officials saying, city officials saying, well, we're not going to enforce any mandates, and we're not going, or we want you to use the mandates, we want you to use safety guidelines, but we're not going to enforce anything. You're not going to get fined, you're not going to do all that. But then some of those things did kind of happen on a complaint-driven basis. We needed to give more clear guidance and be a little bit more consistent there. But I have to say, the current city administration, again, the county and all the entities involved, rallied very well, and they were incredibly consistent and very informative, and tried to educate people to get done what needed to be done. And I think as a city, our cities responded well, our citizenry has responded well, and our government entities have done a really good job. The only thing I would change is maybe be a little bit more clear on the upfront side of it. From that, I don't think there's much room for improvement from what happened. I think they did very well.
The only part I agree with what Paul said is, can you imagine being in charge of telling people how to respond to an international pandemic? That would be a very daunting task. We didn't respond well. Our country didn't respond well. We believed Facebook over science. Seriously, we did. We are responding better now. I want to tell you my personal story. I bleached my lettuce when I got home from the grocery store. I was very nervous. I live with someone who's at a higher risk. Thankfully, the vaccine is here, and thankfully we're getting it out. I think we all went through an education process. I think that the national message was bungled in March. But now it's better, and we are better, and we're responding better. I want to just take a moment to grieve. I think it's 103, and I apologize, I didn't check today. 103 of us have died because we couldn't do this. It's more to it than that, I realize that. I'm being a little bit facetious. But I don't think we responded well at first, but I also can't imagine trying to satisfy people on such very different ends of the political spectrum. That would have been very hard, very difficult. I will say kudos and congratulations to where we are now. Our facility that is rapid testing and vaccine distribution is amazing. I think we're leading the state. I think we are a model for the state, but we had some education to get there. And I think we've all learned a lot. I don't have to bleach my lettuce anymore. But I did at the beginning. And we all got angry at each other. We did. And we need to heal from that. But I think science is now good, messaging is better, and we'll get through it. And thankfully, we have the vaccination here, and we have people who are following social distancing guidelines and good guidelines. So that's how I think we did.
Yeah, I gotta agree with Nora on this one. We weren't proactive with this. We reacted to all of the horrible things that were happening. And that's kind of how our city has done things for a long time, is to not prepare and not warn people for what's coming, just kind of react when it does happen. So this is not only for me from a health perspective, which we did not do well. I mean, that's clear from our death numbers. We did not do well. We were in national papers for quite some time as being ranked one of the worst cities in the country. If anyone thinks we did well, they're confused, in my opinion. But to go back to that, it's not only a health perspective from me, but back to that economic thing, we did not handle it correctly. We've not been handling things correctly for a long time, and this just brought it to light, in my opinion. Thank you.
About 2 years ago, there was a... Oh, sorry. My apologies.
That's fine. We weren't gonna let you get by with that. Okay. I do have opinions. I think Quincy handled the pandemic as well as any other organization. Being on the school board, I gotta tell you, it was extremely challenging when it first hit. And we're getting information from CDC, from the Illinois Department of Education, the Illinois Department of Health, Adams County Health Department, and several others. Just once, I would have loved to see a uniform answer and proposal from any of those groups. Every day, there's conflicting reports as to what to do, and those are our country's specialists, okay? That wasn't handled as well as it should. It wasn't coordinated well. When Roy said to the school board, we're here in the spring, we got the summer, what do you want to do as we're planning for the fall? And right away I said, look, we have to have an in-person school option for our students and our families. And Quincy didn't follow the lead. Quincy led Illinois and the country by having a very successful in-person education with over 70% of our students. We proved that the students and staff were not transmitters of COVID, and we kept a wrap over it, but we also let families work, support themselves, instead of being forced to stay home and take care of school-age children. 2 years ago, I don't know that most people in this room could have pointed out who Jared Welch was, the head of our Adams County Health Department. He became the center of attention, and not necessarily in a good way. I mean, a lot of people were critical of his actions. Sometimes he was just a messenger, okay, because he was learning as we were going through. But I gotta tell you, we are so lucky to have Jared, the Adams County Health Department, and their staff that did and are doing everything that they can. The city administration, I don't agree with some of the other comments here. I think they've done a remarkable job to take a lead. Again, Quincy, okay, what happened? We had more COVID testing for weeks that took people that were asymptomatic, that didn't think they were sick. We got them tested, they found out they were sick, they got treated, we got them out of the day-to-day role. That saved more deaths than what we've experienced, okay? It is remarkable, the foresight that the community has, worked with the Adams County Health Department, the city of Quincy, the other medical healthcare providers. We should be thrilled to death that we have people like that in our community.
Right on.
Thank you. About 2 years ago, there was a heavy push to turn the city elections into nonpartisan elections, and that did not pass, but there was a big push for that. What's your opinion on whether to do that in the future or not?
I fully support nonpartisan city government. I think especially after the divide that we've experienced recently, many cities, I think there's only a handful in Illinois that still have partisan elections, so I would fully support that. I do understand the funding mechanism. I was out walking the other day, knocking on doors, talking to people in Quincy, and had a very nice discussion with a man, and he couldn't tell which party I was, so he asked, and when I told him, he said, well, you're a liar, and slammed the door. But our conversation up until that point was very friendly, and it was very productive. So I think we need to rip the labels off of politicians in Quincy, because we are all here to make Quincy better. And truly, we need to worry about the issues and not about what you think I think, or what I think you think because you have a label on you. So I would like to revisit that. I think we can do that here, and I think it would also increase the caliber of people who would run for office. It's hard to get people to run for alderperson and precinctmen and countymen and all that kind of stuff. It's actually difficult. People don't want to get into the fray. But it's all about helping Quincy. So I would fully support nonpartisan city elections.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. Nonpartisan elections are something that at the very least the citizens should have been able to vote on in November. I have very similar experiences with Nora. I've been called a communist, socialist, whatever you want to call me, because I'm a Democrat, which is super unfortunate that it's like that. So I'm very in favor of nonpartisan elections. I think it would start to heal that divide that we have because of state, national, whatever other politics we have, because we are all genuine people here to help you.
You ready for it? You know, I'm probably the only one here that's run in an election, or actually two of them, as a nonpartisan. The school board, you don't pick a Republican or independent or a Democrat, you run nonpartisan. You know, I've been a lifelong Republican, I've got conservative values. That's me, okay? Do I have to run and say I'm truly real? If you look at my experiences, you look at my accomplishments, and you look at how I operate, people will understand I'm a conservative. And I think what I'm finding when we talk to people in different groups or in the neighborhoods, they're thrilled that somebody with my background is actually willing to run at this time. And Quincy's been great to me. It's been great to my family. We're on a launch pad. We've got so many good things going on in Quincy. Do I think the partisan makes a difference? No. I think experience makes the difference in who we pick.
The short answer is, when I was on council, this actually came up for a vote. I did support putting a nonpartisan question on the ballot. I think that's where it belongs. I think the people need to make that decision one way or the other. We can do that by resolute action on the council. It could be put directly on the ballot rather than having to go through a long petition process. But either way, I think it probably should be voted on because it's been brought up a number of times. As far as my personal feelings about it, some may argue this, but I'm a lifelong Republican. My first interest in politics was Ronald Reagan's second election, and he's kind of one of my heroes. So I really believe, especially at the state and federal level, there is a difference, and that difference means something. At the local level, I can tell you from experience, going through 5 elections, that other than at election time, we don't really talk about party unless there's something that comes down from above, from the mayor's chair or something like that, where I've only seen it really happen one time, on my time on the council, where people were kind of yanked in the line on party politics. And that's when a gentleman was asked to address us one night. And on a straight party line vote, he was denied the ability to address the city council. It was the most stunning thing I'd ever seen. I can't believe that happened, that we would not want to hear from one of our constituents, even if it was an uncomfortable question. So basically, my feelings on it are, I think there's a place for it. I think we need to let the people decide. I believe in party politics, but in the same token, it's certainly a decision that the electorate is more than able to make on their own if they want to make that.
Speaking of representing all people, what would you do to increase diversity and get more women and minorities in leadership roles, not only in Quincy, but the Adams County area?
Thank you for the question. So back into what I said quite a bit ago, to increase diversity into this city, we have to stop talking about affordable housing. It doesn't exist in the way that people think it does. It's not real. We need to talk about socially equitable housing, which when cities begin to talk about socially equitable housing, the diversity in that city goes up by sometimes 20 to 25 percentage points. When there are more opportunities for you in this city, more people come. That makes common sense to me. And so not only is it going to bring a wide array of people to our city, but it is going to diversify our city further. Something startling to me that I wasn't even aware of when I talked to somebody was that you have to drive to St. Louis to find a black lawyer. That's not okay with me. It shouldn't be okay with anyone here tonight. So we have to start at least having this conversation and changing our mindsets, because we are not as welcoming of a community as many of us would like to believe. I experienced that firsthand, and I know many people who experienced that firsthand. Thank you.
I think that's an excellent question. I think overall, in my lifetime, I've seen Quincy progress through this issue. Are we where we need to be? No. But you know, we have a woman heading up Blessing Health Systems today, and she's doing an awesome job. We've got women in key positions throughout different organizations. We've got women business owners. We've got women department heads, and we've got women aldermen within the city. We've got women on the county board. So women have been accepted, they've stood up, they're running for offices, they're getting elected. We have minorities that are getting better. 20 years ago, I don't think you could find too many minorities in the fire department or the police department. We have more now than we've ever had before. So our community is changing. We could get into I think the debate, is it fast enough and is it, soon enough? Well, anytime you're making change, it doesn't happen as fast as people would like. But Quincy, I believe, has turned the corner. We're open, we're accepting more changes, and I think we need to continue to do that. We see the benefits of doing it.
Thanks for the question. It's a tough one, I gotta be honest with you. I think one of the things that we see on this issue, we need to have more diversity across the board in every aspect of our community. I do have to think that from where, even when I was younger, to where it is now, it seems to be much better. Again, but I'm not a minority in Quincy. I'm a middle class, white Catholic person, so I'm pretty much the antithesis of a minority here in Quincy. But I would say I've seen some things happen, especially as it pertains to the city, and that's what we're talking about tonight, city government. We've seen strides, even in the time that I was on there. We went from pretty much an all-male city council to some changes. We saw some minorities get elected to city council. Is it, again, where we want to be, as we've all said? No, it certainly isn't. One of the initiatives that happened a few years ago that I talked to Dr. Jones about was we tried to build I guess you'd say, a program to help minorities get more involved in the police and fire department. And it was relatively successful back in the day, and I think we want to revive that. I think that needs to come back. And it's not just about the social aspects of all of that. It's about having a government and a workforce, and especially a public service that interacts so much with our community that looks like our community. It's a comfort level. And that's important. People need to trust the government and their government agents, our police, our fire, our EMS, all of those things. But to say that, of course there's racial divides and gender divides and things like that are still going on. To say there is, it would be untruthful. But I have to think the good heart that Quincy has, as a rule, is our people are very good people. And they're very open and accepting from my experience. I just think we can do this, and it's just something we just need to work at it together, and it'll certainly get better sooner rather than later, I hope.
I have a really good idea how to increase women in leadership positions. Will y'all vote for me April 6th? There, solved it. Didn't solve it. I think that the path forward is person to person, we do have a lot of attitudes here. I'm currently teach at Quincy University, and there's a lot of diversity on campus. And it is vibrant, and it is enthusiastic, and it is celebratory, and it is really, really fun to work with young people. But many of them tell me they don't want to leave campus. They're scared of Quincy. Can you believe that? Isn't that something hard to hear? They don't want to get off campus. So how do we fix that? We do hire, we do engage more with the Human Rights Commission. Currently, the Human Rights Commission is trying to reorganize just a little bit to get a little bit more proactive than reactive. We have culture fairs in the summers, but it ultimately is person to person. I got a wonderful opportunity to take part of the study circles. This was many years ago, and some of you in the room remember that. In fact, I think we were in the same group at one point. And it was a transformative experience. And you know why? Because there were only 10 of us in a group at a time. And the discussions and the learning and the healing that was happening in that study circle changed us. And it was phenomenal, sorry. I know that the Chamber is doing a diversity and inclusion series right now. We need more of that. We need to get more of our citizens through that. We need to expand that so that we can have a vibrant, welcoming, I agree with Brendan, we need to be more aware, and we need to be more welcoming, and we need to, we have to do the work. We have to do the hard work on this one. So I fully support women in leadership positions, so thank you for your vote.
If you were a teacher, what grade would you give the city of Quincy when it comes to transparency, A, B, C, D, or F? And how would you improve it?
The city, grading the city. I would think the city has made so much progress. I'm not a teacher, my wife was. She's retired now, and I work with some of the best educators in the state by being on the school board. So we've got a lot of good teachers. I believe we would definitely rate Quincy leadership with an A for transparency. They see problems, the aldermen, the department heads, the mayor, they don't hide from it. They try to address it, work on a solution. And there are people that will not always agree with what the city council or the city action takes, but that's not the transparency issue. They have to, you're asking the city to make decisions that have a financial impact, that are going to impact, the operations, either the city or part of the community. I think overall, they've done a remarkable job. And let's talk about the COVID just as an example. If the city wasn't the leader that it is, addressing the problem, working with the health department, working with the schools, working with industry, working with the medical community, they wouldn't have set up the testing center. They wouldn't have set up the immunization center. And now Quincy's the example for the state of Illinois. So I think it's not only the leadership but the transparency. I would have to rate it as an A.
I'm not a teacher either, but my wife is a kindergarten teacher, and I was hoping you were going to say, what grade would you teach if you were a teacher, because it would be kindergarten. But anyway, I would have to grade the city on transparency and openness with an A-. And I'm going to explain that a little bit. When I first started on city council a number of years ago, getting information out of the city to the public in an easy manner was almost impossible. You had to go through a number of hoops to get the information. There's obviously, online wasn't a big thing. It sounds like I'm 100 years old, but I'm not. But it wasn't quite as easy to get the information as today. I have to give this administration, especially, some very high marks for putting almost everything they do on their website, and it's easily accessible. The only reason I would give it an A- is what I would like to see happen is much more community involvement, I give the current mayor a lot of credit for, I think he has quarterly lunch with the mayor or meet and greets with the mayor. I would like to make that a much more often thing, once a month with the mayor. And I would also, I think another thing that goes to transparency is allowing the community to address the council directly and the administration much more often and more easily. When I first started on city council, we had no apparatus for an open forum or an open comment section at city council meetings. You could sign up and only talk on the topic. We changed that through some very difficult discussions, which I don't understand why that's even a difficult thing. What I would like to see do is see that the city council adopt as part of the rules is something very similar to what the school board does. They have an open comment section every meeting. And I think the difference is obviously the city council meets every week, but you know what, we're there to represent the people. It takes us a little more time as a city administration to hear from our constituents directly. We should be welcoming that, not making it more difficult. And again, this administration has done a good job. Again, the only reason for the A- is I would like to see a little bit more community involvement. But if anybody wants to know anything about the city, it's out there. You just get on the website, and if you can't find it, you're not looking. So a very good job.
So I am a teacher, so I can answer that with a rubric and with a syllabus and all that good stuff if you'd like me to. When we talk about transparency, though, we also have to talk about access. So it might be on the website, but I have to tell you, it took me 4 clicks to get to the Human Rights Commission page. And I was looking particularly for some information. It is on the website, but how many of our residents aren't online? So where's the transparency there? We've got to talk about accessibility when we talk about transparency. We have Freedom of Information Act, which a lot of people associate with journalism, but it's actually a law for citizens. And it's actually a way for people who can request records and request information if they can't get it readily, right? So we have, that option to us. But if you've ever tried to fill out a request, it's pretty thorough, it's pretty daunting. Sometimes you don't get it back. They don't really have to tell you why they didn't honor your request. So our access points to our local government are the website and requesting information, and thank you to our local media for covering our government for us and doing a good job of that. I think we need more transparency. Of course, I think we need more transparency in a lot of things. I remember when I was a reporter in this town, and we would have the city council meeting, and the very next morning at 9 a.m., it was always a gathering in the mayor's office to talk about what happened at the city council meeting the night before. We need to start doing that again. But we also need to go out into the communities, perhaps that don't have the website, and talk to people. And I like what Paul was saying about, lunch with the mayor and all that good stuff. But the access points and the transparency, if you've ever watched a city council meeting, it's about 15 minutes now. I say that, but COVID, I know, is affecting everything. But even just taking a minute to explain what the ordinance is that is being voted on, it all happens in committee, it arrives at city council, they vote quick, it's done. All that has been agreed upon beforehand. But let's add a little education component to the city council meeting. Let's find a way to expose the process, which pull back the curtain, however you want to talk about it. My skill set is communication, so I would pledge to you much better communication coming out of City Hall. C.
Thank you for the question. I agree with Nora that the biggest thing we need to work on is accessibility. Accessibility to information and accessibility to ourselves, to the city council meetings too. That's the biggest issue, is accessibility. I also had been trying to find some information on the city website. Was it there? Yes. Was it hard to find? Extremely. I go out canvassing nearly every day, and I talk to a lot of people. Just yesterday, I had 3 different people tell me they had issues that they had called 2 different people about, and there's no resolution whatsoever. Now maybe it was done today, but probably not. So that's one of the reasons why I've committed to having an open door policy in my office, and why I've committed to keeping my phone number public, is because if you cannot find someone to help you, I do believe it's my job and my duty to do that. So accessibility is absolutely what we need to work on, and C minus.
And speaking of transparency, open meetings, and accessibility, let's talk about the Quincy Riverfront. What's your opinion about the process thus far to develop Quincy's Riverfront? How that process is going in terms of transparency and open meetings and its future?
So you want to just comment about the meeting process and the process, not the projects themselves, correct?
Yes, the transparency and accessibility and information in open meetings.
I would have to say that the groups that are in charge of putting forth the plans, facilitating the discussion, are doing an outstanding job. Again, when COVID hit, it changed how they do those things, but they've certainly made numerous attempts to get the community engaged and involved. Whether you agree with the project, whether you support the project or not, I think everybody should take the time to comment and to learn about those major things that are going on in our city. And again, if people haven't, unfortunately, right now with COVID, it's basically an online situation. But they've done a good job of making it as available as they can with the challenges they had. They were very open when pre-COVID about having the meetings where everybody could attend, and they were very well publicized. So I think they've done a great job of giving everybody the opportunity to see what's going on, to see what's happening, to comment, and to take part in the process. And that's really all you can really ask of any government or pseudo-government agency is, let the government take part in the process. And that's what, if we're not doing that, not facilitating that, as any government entity, we're not doing our job. So to repeat myself, I think they're doing very well.
Surveys have gone out. Now, again, here's a little bit of the accessibility, and truly I don't think we can judge this without the pandemic filter, because I think it's tough. We couldn't have, people come and look at maps and drawings. So I think that the Strategic Next has done an amazing job of getting it out. Perhaps the algorithms didn't quite get it out into the right people on Facebook. I don't know. It seems like we all share the negative stories on social media, but when something is asking for help and asking for the process to help us with this discussion, how does that get shared? Maybe it didn't. I know that personally I've seen a lot of outreach to give feedback and to look at the storyboarding and to look at some of the plans going on. I also know that the people involved in this are very cognizant of getting feedback, and so outreach is huge. I think it's the most exciting thing to hit Quincy in a very long time, and I think this is what we need to be a vibrant community. I think it has had a lot of good public input, but you can always ask for more. But I'm pretty impressed with the process so far.
I agree with Nora. It's been pretty good. We can't, again, judge exactly like we normally would because there hasn't been the same accessibility with the pandemic. Something I would want to improve is, as far as I know, most of the polling and wanting answers has been done through Facebook, which doesn't affect everybody in the community, and even when it is put on Facebook, it doesn't affect everybody on Facebook in the community. So I think we need to definitely move it on to multiple platforms, multiple different ways of outreach. But overall, yeah, it's been pretty good.
Yeah, I've been impressed as such a complex subject matter with all the phases of what they're trying to address in the strategic plan for the city. And it hasn't been done for a couple of decades, so this is a welcome planning event. From a transparency, COVID or no COVID, You know, there's been presentations on both local television stations that have run different events and information about it, been in the newspaper, been through the chamber, been through the Greta, the other organizations throughout the town, and it's been on the Facebook Live on social media. I don't know where else you could do that. Now, if you as an individual choose not to search the information out, does that mean I get a black mark for not being transparent? I mean, what other medium do we have that they have not, sent the information out to? So I think they've done an outstanding job with the transparency and asking for feedback. It's, some groups, hey, this is what we're going to do, and they really don't want your feedback. This group has bent over backwards, asking, requesting, please, let us know what you're thinking. And that's what's going to make the plan super. And hopefully people will continue to provide that input. But overall, I think it's all awesome.
I, as a journalist, have heard a lot of anger and concerns the past 2 years over recycling, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask about that. What should the city do to handle its recycling now, and how is that different than how the city has handled it the past 2 years?
I've lost where, is that me? Okay, sorry about that. I kind of lost the order there. Right, it's either potholes or pick up my trash or where can I take my recyclables. First of all, kudos to Alderman Awerkamp, who brought up the idea for partnering with Ripple Glass to recycle bottles. I know that came from a business owner in town, the original idea. So it's things like that that we can do. We can find solutions. Quincy Recycle is great, but they are focused on industrial recycling. And they offered, or the city offered, the $10,000 for someone to take up residential recycling, and that didn't quite happen. But I would like to see, more recycling and real recycling, not throwing it in the orange bin and having someone throw it in the trash, or maybe picking out pieces that are viable and putting the rest in the landfill. I think we've got to get back to real recycling. 30 years ago, I actually had the opportunity we did a half-an-hour special on how to clean up your kitchen items so that they could go into the orange bin. And we were washing them and pulling the labels off and all of that good stuff. So recycling has been around here for a long time, and people in Quincy want recycling, because when the trash sticker process changed and we had the totes and we had, the garbage cans come out, people said, oh, you're gonna lose recycling. If you do that, no one is going to pay $5 to get that orange recycle bin. Guess what? They did. They kept it. They wanted to keep it. It's in our DNA now. We want to recycle. So we have to find a way, I don't know, do we build a facility in Quincy that can handle its own recycling, city recycling, and not in competition with Quincy Recycle, two different streams? But, can we do something like that? I think we have a responsibility to look for those solutions, and I sure would like to see recycling, be much more viable than it is right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was also very excited about the possibility of the glass recycling. Something that I think that we need to look at is outsourcing residential recycling, because there's just not a viable option in the city. Do we look at the possibility of building a facility to do that for us? Possibly. Is that going to take a while? Yeah. So until that becomes available, we need to have recycling available. So to do that, I think we need to look at outsourcing.
I think recycling is a benefit not only for us, but the next future generation. So I think we really shouldn't make it a choice. We really need to encourage more recycling. But like everything else, there's an economic formula, and plastic used to be, the recyclers could make a lot of money by recycling plastic. That's changed over the years. And so there's an economic impact that nobody wants to talk about as to what to do. I don't think the city should build a recyclable plant. I think we've got too many other issues that are on our table today that we need to address, like infrastructure, the police and fire pension. There's too many other things that are some pretty big price tags that I'd rather not add another project we want to take on recycling. Can we find third-party independent providers to do it? Well, yes, we can. Alderman Avercamp proved it in the last week or 2 weeks by learning about the glass. There's a group in Kansas City who can do it. Now, that's costing the city up to, I think, $20,000 a year. There is going to be an offset because with all that glass, okay, hopefully there'll be less going to the landfill. So are we going to make up the $20,000 savings on our landfill savings? I don't know. That's not what drove that decision. The driver was people would like to recycle glass. It was a reasonably priced method to do it. So let's try it. Those kinds of things I think make sense. But should the city of Quincy get involved building a recyclable plant? At this time, I've got to say, no, thank you.
Well, this recycling and waste issues were huge a few years ago on city council while I was still on there. Recycling and waste issues are a hotbed issue. For some reason, it brings out emotions in people. I don't know why, frankly. But part of recycling is the social responsibility aspect of it, that people want to recycle. We feel like we're doing something good for the community and for the environment. We are with recycling. But frankly, as a city, we need to look at the economic impact that it has on our city. Right now, when we recycle, as was said before, there's not a market for most of those commodities or the product of that. We, at one time, had it set up that it was an inflow of revenue. But right now, with the way it's set up with dirty loads and things like that, it's probably a net loss for us. So I think, everybody wants to recycle. I want to recycle. I paid the extra money for the bins, as a matter of fact. I didn't think I would, actually. But at some point, we need to look at if there is perhaps another way to do it with a third party, another way to look at it if there's another private option that we can bring in. The Ripple Glass recycle was interesting to me because it's a relatively low cost, as was said. There may be an offset in our landfill fees, but the reason that's viable for the private entity is because it's to a specific market. It's used for a specific product. We don't have that with a lot of those other, if you want to call them commodities or materials. So I think the answer to recycling is, as we proved when we went through the discussions with recycling and waste a few years ago, there were private options, talked about various private options. One was a contract for the city with one hauler. My preferred at the time was completely privatizing it out of business completely. The community spoke very vehemently that they did not want those options. They wanted it to be a city service. So we're recycling waste, all of those services need to be discussed. And if it is considered a core service by our community, we need to build that into our planning for the future. So I think we need to engage the community again at some point and have that discussion, explain the ins and outs of recycling waste and all those things. If there were a decision left to me alone, it would be to privatize. But I was reminded on city council that I don't get to make that decision by myself. And the community spoke very loudly again that they didn't want that. So I think before we make any change to recycling or waste or anything like that, we need to re-engage the community as the past administration did on garbage and waste issues, and make sure we hear what they want and try to make that happen.
All right, this is my last question, so if you want to write down your questions and bring them up to me, get ready. But my last question for the candidates are, how would you work with Hannibal, Keokuk, Mount Sterling, Macomb, Fort Madison to become a regional hub of economic opportunity for the area, since many of those communities are facing the same challenges and opportunities?
Thank you for the question. Sorry, can you guys hear me? I do think that because of this current pandemic, what is vital at the moment is to focus economically on Quincy, and make sure that we're okay before we start looking at outsiders. I do think that helping other cities, though, will help us. If this area as a whole becomes attractive, Quincy in itself then becomes attractive. So what I think is most important right now is focusing economically on our people, but in the future I also do think that attraction to other cities around us will bring attraction to us.
Yeah, I like that question. Quincy has been the leader. We're the largest town in a 100-mile radius. We're going to continue to be the leader of this region. There are groups together. We've had the mayors of KHQA, Quincy, and Hannibal get together earlier this year, try to team up to lessen the COVID impact, just as the most recent example. We have the Tri-State Summit, which has pulled the various counties from Illinois, Missouri, and Iowa, including the specific towns that you talked about. And we pulled in our federal congressional staff, we pulled in governors to have a broader discussion if it was transportation or other economic development issues. So there is a framework that is ongoing to bring that together. I don't, can we do more? I think we can, but remember, the mayors of these communities, they've got full-time jobs working in their community on specific problems, but can we do something quarterly with just the mayors to try to, help one another, make sure we understand what everyone is doing? I think we absolutely can do that. There's always room for improvement, but I want to be clear that there's a lot of that collaboration already occurring, and we should be proud of how that's been working.
I think you have to work together with all the surrounding communities, or nobody will be successful. As was mentioned, we have the Tri-State Summit that's been successful in the past, bringing folks together. The Quincy will always be or at least hopefully will always be a retail hub. It will be, as was mentioned, a medical hub. We are the largest city in the area, and to shirk from that duty to bring people together would be failing our community. And we have to bring the region together. We have to work together. I would envision some shared marketing initiatives to where we try to build off the strengths of, we know Hannibal has strong tourism, bounce off of that and try to sell Quincy as part of an offshoot of that, to where we can put our unique tourism opportunities out there that would enhance Hannibal instead of competing with Hannibal. For instance, it includes all the towns and cities we talked about, Northeast Missouri, all the areas, especially being a border city. It makes it a little bit rougher when we talk about going to a different state and trying to work together with them. But if we put all of those things aside, I see no reason that we can't expand on the work that other administrations and other folks have already put into this, and make this an easy sell to bring it all together.
I agree as well. Tri-State Summit is hugely successful. I think we have a great tourism program. I think that like you said, the mechanisms are already there. The groups are already working together. I look so forward to being an ambassador for Quincy, to visit these towns, to visit Springfield, Chicago, DC, to really brag about Quincy and to build coalitions with people who can help us out. We've got a lot of great people. We've got a lot of employees here that are coming over the bridge from Missouri and even down from Iowa. And we've got people who live in Quincy and work in other places. So I think our citizenry is already collaborative. But I think continuing the great work that Greta does, that at the Tri-State Summit, it's just building on the success that we've already had.
we are taking questions from the public. First, what would you do to strengthen the mission of the Human Rights Commission?
I think we need to meet with the leaders of the Human Rights Commission. And I don't know why it's floundering, so I want to sit down with them and, the school district's involved. We've got people on the school board that are participating in that. We've got some other participations throughout the community handling or trying to address those issues. I don't know if we need to pull that closer under one roof or make clear who's responsible to try to do a better job with it or improve it. It's a serious issue. It needs some attention. I think we need to pull people together and, okay, this is what we've done so far. What else do we really need to take it to the next level? And I don't have the answers for that, but I know several people that we can call and ask, and I'm sure they've got advice for us.
I actually, when I first joined council, I was actually assigned to the Human Rights Commission, and I think one of the problems or one of the frustrations that the commission has, and this is strictly speculation, I haven't talked to anybody about this, is that the charter of the Human Rights Commission is very limited. I think there's a desire of the members to do more than what they're chartered to do. So I think what the next mayor needs to do, or what we need to do, if we want to make that commission feel involved and part of the community, let's take a look at that charter and see if there's something that needs to be changed. Let's get input from the folks that are doing the work on the commission to see if there's something that perhaps can be changed in the charter and their mission statements. For the most part, I think, they're doing what they're chartered to do, but the frustration is that instead of let them do what they feel that needs to be done. Again, this is a decision that would have to go through the city administration, the council, to change that charter and mission statement. But I don't see any reason not to at least have the discussion, the conversation, and see if we can make it work better for those that are involved, and make it, have the teeth or the ability to do what the members think the organization needs to do. Again, it is an appointed position by the mayor's office. So when we ask people to do a job, we need to listen to them if they can do the job with the tools that we've given them. If they don't feel they are, we need to give them more tools. So that's where I would be on that situation.
So the Human Rights Commission was the first commission that I requested to attend their meeting, so I can actually tell you what they're talking about. They do want to change. I know that they had a draft of the bylaws that they were looking at in order to give the commission more teeth when they got a complaint. So right now, the Human Rights Commission works if someone has an incident, a problem, the person who is affected can go to the Human Rights Commission and say, this happened, this is what I'm dealing with, this is what I'd like you to look at. The power of the commission right now is to write up a report, a memo, if you will, and then if it's a criminal matter, hand it to the chief of police, and they find the agency to hand it off to. What doesn't happen is it doesn't come back. So the information, other than, if it is really serious, Chief Copeland would come back and say, here's what happened, but oftentimes that doesn't happen. So the Human Rights Commission right now is a really great group of people. I really enjoyed visiting with them on their meeting just about a month ago. And they're very interested in changing what they can do. They're interested in being proactive. There was talk of holding a multicultural fair in Quincy, to start getting some information and some culture and some healing out into the community. So again, I would pull, I said this earlier, I'd pull the Human Rights Commission and put it on the front page of the city website. I'd like to hear from the Human Rights Commission at every city council meeting. I think it's that important that it's not just a line item in a report, that gets handed into the mayor's office and gets filed or doesn't get filed. I think they need to be higher profile. I think that commission wants to do the work, and I think we take their lead and say, yes, let's give you the code and the bylaws and the organizational tools to do what you already want to do. And I think there's so much potential with that commission. And I think commissions in general, I did attend the meeting. I'll tell you that the alderperson assigned to that meeting wasn't there, and I've heard that's kind of happens a lot. So I think all of our commissions need kind of a once-over to look at and make sure that they're operating the way that they should.
Yeah, I completely agree. Whether you want to call it teeth, weight, whatever, they don't have it. And they were designed not to have it. That was the point. So that needs to change, and that's not a question for me, that just needs to change. So the Human Rights Commission is a great place to go voice your concerns about things that you have. It's not a great place for anything to happen, and that is what needs to change. We need to work in conjunction. It needs to be a partnership rather than seeing them as a separate and weaker entity. Thank you.
Thank you. After the murders of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd, the Quincy community came together to unite and begin the healing process of past racial divides. If elected mayor, how will you continue this healing process among the community and make it a priority?
Well, those instances and many others that happened over the last few months are obviously disturbing and unfortunate. A pretty simple word to use in that case, but that's the only thing I can think of at that point. As mayor, what we need to do is just be, it kind of goes back to the question we answered earlier. We need to make sure that we're open and listening, engaging the community as often as we can, making ourselves accessible, and going out into the community, maybe some of those communities that we're not necessarily comfortable going into, and some of those areas that we're not necessarily comfortable going into, or groups that we're not necessarily comfortable talking to, or just to make sure that we bring everybody in. Everybody has a voice, and everybody has the ability to voice concerns and get their viewpoint heard. The one thing I don't condone at any level, no matter what the motivation, is violence. And I'm proud of our city because we had those discussions without violence. I don't care what group you belong to, when violence becomes part of the equation, no matter what the motivation, as far as I'm concerned, you've lost your point. And I don't believe that is the way to go. Again, I'm extremely proud of our city, the way we handled it. I think our law enforcement did a great job of walking the line that they needed to walk, and our city government did a good job. And a really good job to our citizens that were frustrated and upset, voicing their opinion in a peaceful and respectful way. And I think all parties involved did a really good job. And as mayor, I would condone that and make sure that that's how we handle things moving forward on those contentious issues.
That was a fun day. That was a nice rally. It was meaningful, and it was very important for this community to do that. I'd love to see it every year. Let's make it an annual event. I'd like to expand the diversity and inclusion program from the Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to bring back study circles, or maybe there's a new iteration of that. That was a little while ago. Like I said earlier, there's work to be done, and we need to do the work, and we need a leader who's not afraid to do the work and not afraid to vocally say we need to do the work and bring the right people to the table and let everyone have a voice. And I think this is one of the most important things moving forward. It's how we're going to get past the pandemic. It's how we're going to recover. And I think this is vital to us moving forward.
Thank you for the question. I would like to take a moment of silence real quick to honor those lives that have been lost to what we're talking about. So, the common factor in both of those deaths mentioned is the police. So, what my personal opinion is we need to take a look at how we police and change how we police. There are two different things that I would love to see this community do. One is the program Cahoots, which I have been talking about since I launched my campaign, which acts as a response to certain 911 calls that are related to mental health, drug abuse, or nonviolent disputes. That's something that has dropped crime rates in cities by 35 to 55 percentage points. It works, and it makes common sense to me. Something else is on the policing part of it. We need our police to not make people feel as uncomfortable, make them wanted in situations where they're needed. So a good way to do that would be, like Paul mentioned, get out into the communities that you might not feel as comfortable in. Talk to those people, learn their names. We have to make an effort. And then to tie back into that, increasing diversity in our city is vital. And I'm going to say it again, we have to stop talking about affordable housing and start talking about socially equitable housing. It's not something that we can continue to do. Thank you.
Raj, I think this is a very serious issue, and anytime you have a loss of life, and then you learn more about the story and how those cases specifically, most of us can't explain, can't understand, or cannot comprehend how any of that could have happened. So I see that as a way that we were getting together in Quincy, because I didn't talk to anybody that felt any of those things were justified. So I think Quincy could get together and understand and say how that was a bad, evil situation, and we've got to be careful that we don't do that in our local community. With that, I know the police have gone out and talked. I know within the school district, our staff have pointed out situations, how they have been pulled over for some unknown reason and questioned, and the only thing they can say is because it was the color of their skin. Okay, that's not right. Okay, we're better than that. And I agree, I think a couple of people said, you want to protest, peaceful protest, you know what? That's one of our constitutional rights. I'm in favor of that. But if you cross the line and it's no longer peaceful, then law enforcement has to step in. Okay? Do they have to be violent? No. You talk to the Quincy police, you talk to the sheriff's department, and they have training. And I think we really haven't had any significant issue like that. Now, do we have targeted groups that are being pulled over more frequently than others? But that's being monitored, to try to break that sequence or that pattern. And again, as people, I think in this case with the deaths, I think our religious leaders in our community did an excellent job in talking about the issue, how we can deal, how we need to treat one another as neighbors, how we want to be treated, in the same situation if we were there. Those are good lessons to learn, and so I think it's a community-wide discussion that has to be ongoing to hopefully never allow that to happen in Quincy.
And I'm going to,
No, I'm sorry.
oh, okay. I'm going to combine these two questions because they're sort of the same. This one says, what about the potholes? And then this one says, our roads are a mess. Potholes are damaging our vehicles. Our trees have taken down power lines and left many of us without power. What priority would your administration give to infrastructure repair, and what sources do you see for finding the needed funding for this?
I know, this is the number one thing people say when I knock on the door, and how's it going? What do you think? Oh, have you driven down Main Street? I had one resident say she thought she was going to get pulled over for drunk driving, and because she's trying to dodge the potholes. So we do have a $33 million street and roads plan. You know, this is something that we have been talking about since I came to town. You know, fix the potholes, fix the potholes. Obviously, it's part of the seasonal treatment of the roads, but it sure does seem to be worse now, and it seems like we have some pretty bad places. I know that some plans give the wards money, and you know, then the older people get to decide how those streets are paved. What we're doing right now is actually digging up and getting into the sewer lines. We've got a real problem there. We've got to get those old pipes and everything fixed and get the lead out of the water and all that good stuff. So it is a process. It is expensive. It has to, you know, you have to get down deep. But to prioritize, yeah, that's something we have to do. You know, even if it's just a resurfacing before we can get to the undercarriage of the roads, we've at least got to do that. And we've got to do roads that, the worst roads need the most attention first. It can't be you know, this ward, it's this ward's turn. It's got to be the most traveled roads and the ones that we all use. I've seen so many cul-de-sacs as I'm walking around town, smooth as silk. How many cars go down that cul-de-sac? How many cars go down Main Street from 24th to 36th? So I think there's a priority there, and I think, you know, thankfully we do have a plan it's going to take a while, it'll get there, but definitely prioritize this, pave the roads, let's get these streets back in shape. But it also means curbs and sidewalks. It's also more in the infrastructure. And I think we do have to pay attention to sewer, you know, rebuilding the sewers and get all that stuff going as well. So yeah, that's the perennial question, isn't it? I mean, how many of us have bought new shocks recently, right, for our cars? So definitely something that is top of mind and top on the to-do list.
This is also top of mind for me for a very particular reason. For me, this is comical that we're having to dodge potholes like this, but it's also frightening that one of the most basic things a city is supposed to do, they're not doing, right? That goes into that lack of leadership that we if nobody wants to talk about it, I'll talk about it. We have a lack of leadership, okay? This just shows it. Simple things are not being addressed in the way that they should, as fast as they should. There's some good work being done, and there's some roads that are being fixed, but not really, guys. Not in the way that it should.
Yeah, infrastructure, one of my top 3 issues that I have publicly stated time and again. It's vitally important to Quincy and our future. I believe the city has made progress in their planning, multi-year out. What are the infrastructure projects that we need to take a look at? I think that process is good. How many people here remember when the city used to do the road surface and within a month, another crew was coming to dig it up to fix the water pipe, okay? That was a waste of money, okay? So I do like what the city and the engineering group have come up with is we're gonna redo this because the water, the sewer, the curbs, and the top surface all need to be replaced. It's more expensive, so that means we can do fewer blocks or fewer miles per year, but our infrastructure under the ground, okay, is in dire needs. Now, the other effect here is we keep hearing at the national and the state level about infrastructure. Well, if the state and or the federal government does have dollars for infrastructure, I can assure you Quincy is going to submit plans on all sorts of infrastructure projects that we have because the engineering department has planned that out for multiple years, and we can speed that up if we have money. It's a limited resource. People don't want us to double their taxes to be able to do twice as many road repairs. We've got to manage that. And I agree. Even though the engineering department has multiple years planned out, every year they take a look. What else has happened that maybe we gotta move something from 2 years from now to a current priority. Okay, so we have prudent, reasonable people working and addressing these issues. We need to continue to do that. And if we can find more money to help speed up the infrastructure, I'll be the first one to jump on it.
To answer the question directly first, before I get into detail, infrastructure is, from being on city council, the one constant you hear is that I want my street fixed. There's no question that infrastructure is important to almost every constituent that you talk to, especially if the damaged infrastructure or failing infrastructure is in front of their home. What the funding for our infrastructure programs comes from a number of sources. There's our capital funds that go to part of our infrastructure improvements, which we've made great strides in the last administration, putting more money towards that. One of the things that facilitated that is that the under street part of the project, the sewer and water lines, is now paid out of the 501 and 502 funds. I called it a 503 fund on the radio, I made a mistake. It's 501 and 502, which is our water and sewer funds, which operate kind of as a business. Everything you pay in utilities goes directly to operate those systems. So in 2014, we changed how funding worked, and instead of all of that money for a job, infrastructure project at the top of the street and below the street comes from our capital budget, which would shrink the ability to do work. This administration, working with the council, changed that to where those sewer funds, the part of the project that benefited the water and sewer, is paid out of the water and sewer funds. It makes sense. The other part of that, there's motor fuel tax money, which is a per capita return about 49% down to the lower part of Illinois. We get that on a per capita basis, and that's actually gone down. That can only be used for maintenance. So it's important to know where these things can be used. And then there's FAU money, which is part of our federal dollars coming back to us to do. Again, those are very limited on what infrastructure projects we can use those on. The one thing that I do take a bit of exception with, or I do think is a little bit misleading, every time there is a capital project done, a street resurface, the underground infrastructure is considered. And that's gone back before I was ever on council, before anybody that we're familiar with was on council. That has always been considered. Now, whether it was addressed or not is another thing, but most of the time it was. Most of the time we did a major street reconstruction, it was always looked at if water and sewer need to be addressed. And then once a street is resurfaced, there's a 1-year moratorium on opening that street anyway. It has to go back to the council to be opened back up for any reason. So I'm not quite sure where that's coming from on that comment, but I think our engineering department does a great job, and it has always done a great job of rating those projects that need to be done on a graded scale. Every alderman gets that every year. They get it for their ward, they can look at it for the entire city.
Okay, we start with you now. What type of city funding or federal funding is available for minority small business property ownership and home ownership?
Will you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Sure. What type of city funding or federal funding is available for minority small businesses, property ownership, and home ownership? And if you're not sure, what kind of funding should there be available?
More of it. On the housing aspect, I don't even really need to say this again, but there's federal funding available to build affordable housing and to keep up affordable housing. Again, that means nothing to anyone in real life. We as a city need to take that funding that is available and move that into socially equitable housing where people of any social class or at any point in the economy, they're available to them. There are opportunities available for those people. So there needs to be more funding to get those people here into those.
I don't think there's adequate funding available currently, but one of the things that the county and the city has recently done is worked for grants to get what they call a land bank. And those dollars will be able to buy property that's either abandoned or people have not paid their taxes, real estate taxes on, so they're delinquent. The land bank will be able to sell property to anybody they want to. That, I think, is gonna go a long way to improve some of the older parts of the community. It's not limited to a specific geographical area in Quincy or Adams County. We'll be able to look at wherever we need to go. We may be able to clean up, blocks at a time. We may only be able to do 1 or 2 lots at a time, but that will open up other financing options for people that would want to build or renovate a property. A lot of the tax credits, Credit keeps talking about affordable housing, and we shouldn't talk about it. There's tax credits on a federal basis that help. That doesn't help necessarily anybody but the developer to do that, but you need investment dollars, you need people that are willing to invest in property to make these other housing arrangements. And if they're gonna be rental properties, then we're gonna make them available to more people at reasonable rates. And I think that goes in line with what he's trying to get. Instead of calling it affordable, you want social, targeted, so anybody of any social class can benefit. And I think that's the other area that we're trying to wake up developers that basically west of 12th Street, we've got some massive pockets of opportunity for people, developers, and or people that want to renovate property to make neighborhoods better, have less expensive, affordable housing for themselves versus buying land outside the city limits and building there.
I'm just going to be really honest and say that I'm not aware of any targeted minority programs for housing at those levels. I'm just not going to try and walk through that without just being honest about it. But I do believe that there are some things that are happening in our area that can lead to affordable housing or housing opportunities that don't exist today. As was mentioned, one of those is the land bank. And the land bank was actually talked about, I think about 2 years ago. There was a $200,000 grant from the state that went to, I believe it was Adams County or Two Rivers, but I'm not sure about that. The land bank then was going to be potentially be an intergovernmental agreement between the city, because they have their own home rule capability that allows them to do some things that the other entities can't do. So it was a kind of perfect storm of partnership and grant dollars available for that. The land bank in the original inception was going to be, would buy properties that were habitually on the tax delinquent rolls. What will happen is someone will buy that property with a delinquent tax issue. They can't get it sold, they don't really care, they put it back on the rolls, and it's just a big circle. The land bank will allow the land bank to step in with professionals that know how to market that, know how to buy that, and would not make the city of Quincy a real estate agent. We don't need to be in the real estate business. That's not the function of the city of Quincy. And then they would market those back out and get them sold to either a developer or to somebody that wanted the property. Again, I think the original vision was there'd be Two Rivers that would kind of manage that with additional staff. The other thing that we talk about that impacts availability of housing, or could impact the availability of housing, is the city's fix or flat program, which takes, these are properties that are past those ones we talked about at the land bank, that are the worst of the worst, continually nuisance properties. It goes through a rather lengthy legal process, and the city gets those properties, they get them ready to be sold as predominantly lots because the buildings are in too bad shape. And then those are available for development or somebody that wants to buy to put a house on there, whatever issue, but they bid those out every year. So they're available to the developer. If there's a developer that sees a need for additional housing, lots are available and those lots are affordable. And they're bid out every single year. It's bid out right now. We don't have to change anything on that program. They just put some more money into that came from cannabis revenue into the Fix or Flatten program, so we can put more houses on that. So I think the other intangible or tangible, I guess, really, asset of the Fix or Flatten program is that it makes the rest of the neighborhood more attractive as well. If you get rid of a blighted property, people want to spend more, and most people take pride in their homes and their neighborhoods, and this kind of helps along with that aspect of it as well.
I only have one worry about the land bank situation is if I read it correctly, if it takes an opportunity for someone not paying taxes on their land and it takes it away from them, what if the pandemic caused that problem? And what if we are now increasing the poverty level in Quincy by giving a bank all this land and having other people buy it? So I'm a little concerned about that. I'd like to learn more about it, quite frankly. But I'd like to address another aspect of that question. One of the hidden questions in there was, where is there support for minority-owned businesses? And I had a really nice talk with Katie Hasselbeck from the Quincy Public Library. And she had an opportunity to do some grant work, and she's trying to figure out how the Quincy Public Library can help be a business incubator of sorts. So there's so many rich resources in our public library system, and she's very interested in small business support and small business education and helping people who have an idea, they want to do something, to find resources to help them put that idea to fruition in the Quincy Public Library. So I think we have hidden resources that we might not be taking advantage of too much right now. So I'd love to see, that expand as well. Another, I said earlier tonight I would be in favor of nonpartisan city government, and I stand by that. However, I would also think that as a Democrat, I could work with a Democrat governor and a Democrat president to get more of what is ours, our tax money, back into Quincy. And I think there would be doors open to a Democrat from Quincy that have not been opened recently. So I would take full advantage of that, being an ambassador for Quincy, and bring back ideas and programs and grants and things that we could use to solve what your question got at in the first place.
Should we have fewer aldermen and women?
We have 14 aldermen, 2 elected per ward. Communities our size, most of them have smaller city councils, city government. I think it's something to take a look at, but I think overall, when you look at how effective our city council has been and city government, I don't know that there's a dysfunction there to say that we need to do something different. So we could talk about it, but I don't think there's an urgent need to reduce the size of the city government. But again, other communities similar size, it is. There's a cost, per alderman, per city council person, et cetera. I think it's also, I would like to see as mayor working with the council and being a little bit clear with areas of responsibility and follow up with their residents in their ward and on various committees. I think it's important, but we got a paid position. Yes, it's part-time, but there's a responsibility that comes with that, and we need people that are willing to put the time in to take care of their wards and be on the other committees that they're working on behalf of the city for.
The first answer, the easy answer is no, I do not believe the city council size needs to be reduced. We can talk about compensation, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about, but as far as I'm concerned, from living as an alderman and working it, and I'd like to think I worked it well for 16 years, I can tell you that it's always a good thing to have somebody to back you up that can take a resident's concern to the city for that other seatmate that you have, or to bounce ideas off of, or to get a counter argument to something you want to do in the ward. The other side of it is Quite frankly, 14 ideas to me are better than 7 or 6 or 5 or whatever the case may be. I don't understand, quite frankly, the aversion to having open, honest, and passionate debate about city issues. We're making some big decisions here, and I don't understand why talking about that and having some debate is a bad thing. And I think hearing from more people as representatives of our city, I just don't see a downside to it. I would note, yes, the city council does have a cost. It actually went down, I think, about 12% over last budget year to this year. And it's about $200,000 total cost as a city council budget, I think, 200 and some. Frankly, to have somebody that represents my interest and does it well, spread out over 14 people, I think that's a pretty good bargain. There are other cities larger than us that have smaller councils. A lot of those have different forms of government as well. I'm not necessarily a proponent of changing our form of government, but I think you need to have, if you're going to have that discussion, you need to have the other discussion that goes along with it. So that the simple answer is the size of the city council doesn't bother me, and I would not be a proponent of changing the size of the council.
Yeah, I need some more information on that too. I think it is a money issue. I think it's a representation issue. I would hate to lose representation. I agree with Paul where, if two have to work on an issue or can back each other up, I like that as well. I know that we're due for a redrawing of the wards, and so that'll take effect, and I think that'll have an effect on perhaps numbers. I'd hate to lose representation, but I do think we need to look at the cost. So I think that's something that I certainly would like to learn more about and hear from different opinions. I was a little concerned when this was brought up in the city council, perhaps for time reasons or brevity, but when it was brought up in the council, basically the council's members said, I would get a lot more phone calls. Well, if that's your only concern, then it's a pretty easy choice as to what to do with size. But I know they do. I know you did, Paul, and I know they do a lot more work than just that. But I'd like to explore that and see. I wouldn't have a quick answer. Yes, we need to reduce it. I wouldn't have a quick answer to say yes, we need to keep it the same. I think that's something that we bring to the table and get the right people in the room and talk about that. But I'd hate to lose representation.
Then the idea loss wouldn't even be a thing. So really the only issue then is less representation. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay, we are now at about 10 minutes after 8. If you want to go through, and you'll have about 3 minutes to tell everybody why they should vote for you and why you would like to become Quincy's next mayor. And so Mike will start.
Paul spoke last, so North.
Nora, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right. Thank you so much for sticking it out and staying with us tonight. This was a lot of fun. I want to commend everyone sitting at the table up here for running because it's a daunting task and it's an important task. And we are on we have a big challenge ahead of us, and we are kind of on the cusp of big changes here. We've talked about roads and recovery, and we've talked about inclusion and diversity, and we've talked about equity and opportunity. And those are the themes that I would like to focus on as mayor. I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I think the right people and all the people want to do this work, and I think we can get there. I am honestly running for mayor because of the last 11 months. The pandemic has really influenced a change in me, and I think it's brought out a way to look at ourselves, and our shared experience has shown us where our strengths are and where our passions are, and I would like to bring that to the city. I think we need a lot more communication. I think we saw that we didn't have a lot of communication, and I think key person to person and key messages that need to come out from the city are what's going to move us forward. I would like to thank our healthcare workers. They have watched our collective pain, and they have carried us through this trauma that we've all been through. And it's no secret that this is going to affect us for the foreseeable future. And I think we need to address it, and I think we need to embrace it and be strong and move forward together through it. I'm ready for the challenge. I would bring everyone to the table and make sure that everyone in Quincy has a voice. And I think that's the most important thing moving forward. I've interviewed a lot of mayoral candidates, and we have been talking about roads for a very long time. So it's time to talk about other things. It's time to fix the roads, but it's also time to move forward as a community with healing and inclusion and opportunity. And I would represent the teacher, the student, the bus driver, the small business owner, the large manufacturer, and our friends and our families. And I thank you for the chance to look at this opportunity, and I thank you for your vote.
Well, thank you, all of you, for coming out tonight. I know we've been here together a while. Listen, I decided to run for mayor at 17 years old. Actually, if I'm elected, I would be the second youngest person elected to any office in the United States. Why did I decide to do that? It wasn't about power, money, whatever some people think it's about. What it's about for me is that there has not been leadership in the adults that I've been watching for a long, long time. And this pandemic has opened my eyes to the fact that we cannot wait any longer. We can't wait another 18 years for someone to do this. It has to be done immediately. Bold, progressive action needs taken. I'm willing to work with people who have different ideas. I'm willing to listen to the people in my community and represent what they are about, because it is not about me, it's about you guys. And that's exactly what I would make my entire administration about, is working directly for everybody in this room, everybody outside of this room. So I think the reason why I should be mayor is because of these things, because of the fact that I'm talking about things no one wants to talk about. I'm willing to have the uncomfortable situations, and I'm willing to listen. Thank you guys for coming tonight.
First, I'd like to thank, our host, the Reverend Dr. Orville Jones, and his congregation for allowing us to be here tonight to answer questions and share our thoughts. I really appreciate the time and what you've done for us. And Raj, the same with you. Thank you for being such a good moderator, even though you tried to skip over me the first time. So, I'm running for mayor, and I'm running as a conservative Republican. And tonight, we talked about a lot of issues. We've addressed a lot of problems. But I don't want to leave that way, just thinking of issues and problems. Let's look at what we have. What are the strengths? What are the assets that this community has? Okay? We are a home to strong educational institutions. So if you're looking for preschool, elementary school, we've got public, private, all the way through. We can get a master's degree in this town. You've got vocational training. We've got all the educational components with fine, strong educational institutions. Something we should be proud of. What else does Quincy have? We've got a significant industrial base of national and international companies based here in Quincy. We've got small businesses that are also based here in Quincy, servicing either the local or a regional effort, or product or services. Other things to be proud of. We also, we talk about stores and retailers that have been closed, but let's recognize the fact Quincy remains a building materials and supply hub. We've got people coming in daily from 50 miles, 75 miles to buy those products and supplies. The other thing that we don't talk enough about is Quincy, over the last decade,
has become a medical destination center. Okay, we've got medical groups now that can provide more services, have more treatments that we didn't have 15, 20 years ago. And they're continuing to bring in other specialists, other services, other treatment centers. There's fewer diseases or illnesses that any of us would have that we could not be treated locally. That's pretty awesome. Okay? Our healthcare, from the county health department to our medical groups and our hospital, have done a marvelous job with COVID. It's too bad they were tested, okay? But they were. The community has invested. We've got 5 new elementary schools. We've spent over $19 million in new street restructuring, $18 million in other infrastructure repairs. We've got a new water source.
Time.
West Kelly.
I'm sorry.
Okay? Quincy's got so much that we're on the launching pad to really grow and get back to a prosperous community. And that's what I want to do, is lead as your mayor to get that accomplished.
Thank you.
I would too like to thank Dr. Jones, the congregation, all of you in attendance in person and all those attendants via online. I am running for mayor to focus our combined efforts and the efforts of the next city administration on ensuring a financially stable, efficient, responsive, and inclusive city government for all of our residents. In other words, good local government. An administration looks to build trust with the community, the city council, and city staff. That looks to set a solid and sustainable foundation to position our city to provide basic and vital services well, and position us to grasp opportunities as they arise, to achieve the bright future that I know we can if we work together. Our next mayor must be able to hit the ground running. We have infrastructure and basic street repair needs, pension funding concerns, financial, operational, and mix of services challenges, and additional public health and financial concerns brought on by COVID-19 that are unprecedented in the history of our city. Our next mayor, city council, city staff, and most importantly, our entire community will have to pull together to face these challenges head on. We need to work together to ensure our core services operate efficiently and well, that we maintain our infrastructure and ensure the public safety, and do everything we can to leverage those growth opportunities that I mentioned before. Local government should be the most accessible and responsive level of government any of us ever experienced. When elected, we will work every day to help provide a local government that listens to our residents and has your best interests as our core belief. Our challenges and opportunities demand a mayor who's made tough decisions and made tough votes on city issues. We represented the people of Quincy, worked with city staff to provide good responses to your concerns and needs, and worked on numerous citywide issues and projects. Someone who has handled city-specific matters covering all aspects of city government, and someone who has offered common sense, conservative solutions and alternatives for city challenges and our opportunities. These are but a few of the issues and areas in which I have been fortunate enough to participate in during my 16 years on city council. And there are many more. I count myself very fortunate to have direct, relevant, and recent experience on city-specific issues that is needed in the mayor's office at this crucial time in our shared journey. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I thank my fellow candidates. I would ask for your vote in the Republican primary on February 23rd and the general election on April 6th. Thank you.
Thank each of you. I'd like to thank you all for your questions, potholes and all. And I would like to give everyone a round of applause. And Pastor Jones. And Pastor Jones, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Let's give God praise for Roger. She did a fantastic job. You mentioned daunting task, and I think and when you were talking there a few moments ago, and she had a daunting task before her, she handled it with grace. We appreciate that. So glad to have each and every one of you here with us. We hope that, like I said, when I take this off, this gets serious. We hope that this has been informative for you. The key thing that we all need to remember is that, yes, the primary is coming up very soon. So many spent so much, so many lives were lost in order for us to have the right to vote. If there's one message that I think that we need to take home with us, it is the determination that whatever we do, whatever choice that we make, whoever you decide you want to vote for, that you do go and vote. Please go ahead. And now I'm looking for every one of you to be here Sunday morning. I do again want to say thank you to each one of these candidates. They've handled themselves very, very well. And we didn't have anybody jumping on each other. That's a real blessing. Thank you for it being so informative and being so gracious in your responses. And thank each and every one of you for coming. As we customarily do, I'm going to ask that you just stand, and we're going to close with a word of prayer. We opened with that, and I think we should close with that. If we did not get to your question, we apologize for that. Timing was a bit of an issue, but thank you again for all of you that stuck it out. Let's pray. Father, we are so thankful tonight for the blessings that you have given. You've given us a forum that we can hear what each one of these candidates have as a mission and have as a part of what they want to accomplish as leaders, to share their vision, to share the blessing that we have in the city of Quincy. Help us, God, to make the right decisions. Most of all, God, we just pray that you would keep your loving hand about us. We pray for those who are sick and are going through difficulties during this pandemic and during this time. Some are related to the pandemic and some are not. But we are praying for all of them. We ask that your blessings of healing would be theirs. We pray for the families in the constituency of Quincy, Illinois. And we pray that you would keep your hand good upon them. And we give you the praise, the honor, and the glory for all of these blessings. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. God bless you. God loves you, and we do too.
Hey, Brendan.